It's time for the September Plan with me, and this month we're getting organized and inspired for back to school with a special theme, the secret language of flowers. Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back. My name is Shayda Campbell, and it's time for the September Plan with me. I'm all about the back to school vibe for this bujo setup. I know I'm not going back to school, but I always think of September as more of a new year than January. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with a cover page, and then we're going to do all these great setups and trackers to help us get organized for the coming school year, the new year. And speaking of lots of trackers and setups, you can print pretty much everything you see me creating here today. It's all available to download, print, and use in your own journal over on my Patreon. Sign up now to support the channel. It's only $2 a month or $22 for the whole year, and you get access to 5 years worth of content the minute you sign up. So for the September cover, I am drawing a bouquet in a vase that's sitting on a table. And like every sketch, I've started with a guide. So I've drawn a line for the table, a little rectangle in the center, that's the vase. And then I've drawn a big circle on top of that vase. And the circle marks like the size and shape of the entirety of the bouquet. From there, I start placing circles within that large circle, and those, of course, are the smaller flowers. I make a little circle, I turn it into a flower. This guide sort of setup allows me to take a complex illustration and just break it down into achievable steps, and I don't just have to look at a blank page and draw a nice drawing. I can make it not so scary. And my folklore theme for the month is the language of flowers. Flowers have this beautiful language. Each flower has a meaning or a few different meanings, and it's sort of from the Victorian era. And since I'm doing a larger setup this month, I wanted to do lots of pretty drawings and flowers and kind of go with this doodly drawing sort of vibe. And the language of flowers, there can be a lot of inspirational messages, and I think that's also perfect for that New Year September vibe. So now what I'm doing is going over my illustration in pen. I'm using a larger nib fine liner, the 0.9 millimeter, and these are the mulatto black liners. All of the supplies are, of course, linked in the video description. You can find everything that I'm using and shop those products on Amazon. It's a great way to support this channel and use the exact same supplies. Now, you might have guessed that this bouquet of flowers is symbolic, so I've chosen flowers with meanings that feel good to me. I have asters, which are the September birth flower, actually, and they have a meaning of love. Poppies for imagination, it's good, nice and creative. Bluebells for humility. Ferns for magic, whatever that means. And gladiolas for strength and victory. And so we have this wonderful symbolic bouquet, and I love this kind of doodly, really graphic, kind of sketchbook look that I'm going for. So I'm keeping my floral illustrations really simple. The vase, is just like a rectangle. I've done a little grid pattern in behind. I've given the vase a sketchy, scribbly shadow, and I'm really digging the overall effect. It's something a little different for me, and I like that, especially for the new year, September. I took a smaller fine liner, the 0.3 millimeter, and I'm just doing some horizontal lines on the table, and that will complete my cover page illustration with the symbolic floral bouquet. Actually, I lied. I'm going to add just a little bit more line shading. Just a few small lines at the center of each flower can really make everything pop, but you don't want to overdo it because we are keeping it simple, doodly, sketchy. So there's the September cover page. Let's flip over, and we're going to do a little goals and focus page that will allow us some space to draw another bouquet and actually name all the flowers and their meanings. So I'm doing a very similar illustration. If drawing a lot in your journal isn't your thing, you could probably skip this. I like to do a lot of doodles and stuff that helps me relax. It's what I enjoy about bullet journaling. It's a really private place where it doesn't really matter if I try something new and mess it up. It's all good. But yeah, if a lot of decoration really isn't for you, this spread is totally not necessary. It's just a spot where I'm going to write some of my goals and affirmations. I'm having fun drawing a lot of the same flowers that I drew on the cover page. I have asters, poppies, bluebells, gladiolas, and a fern. And of course, all the meanings like strength and love and imagination will be written on this page with my goals and affirmations for the month, which I think is nice. For the bluebells, just doing little bell shapes with that ruffled edge. The asters are really just a circle, and then I've made the edge all broken and ruffly. A lot of ruffles going on. I'm completing the contour drawing by tracing over all of the large and small leaves. For the ferns, I've really just done these kind of funny, like long leaf shapes. And then I'm going to complete the entire drawing by going over the vase, doing some vertical lines on the shape, and then adding that shadow and the line for the table, just like we did for the illustration on the cover page. I'll put some little flowers kind of drooping out of the vase, maybe add a few more leaves, but I don't want to overdo it, and I tend to add too much, so I'm being wary of that. And I'll finish up with just a little bit of line shading, a couple lines on the bluebells, on some of the leaves, to darken those leaves a little bit so that we've got a nice contrast between the leaves and the flowers. A lot of these illustrations are hinged on the same kind of principles, and I don't think that makes it boring. I think it makes the setup cohesive, and it makes you feel like you're building on your skills as you move through this entire setup. With that final bit of shading done, I'm actually just going to do a bit of scribble shading on this table surface. I think maybe it looked better without it, but that's okay. I'm going to write all the meanings of the flowers that I've covered. So aster for love, poppy for imagination, when I just realized I can't really fit imagination beside there. Fern for magic. I've got gladiola for strength and victory, and I'll just write imagine, and bluebells for humility. So that is my bouquet full of meaning going into the new year. Well, I keep saying new year, going into September, the school year. And then over here on the left, we're just going to do a rectangle, but make it a little bit flared out at the bottom, if that makes sense. And we're going to write goals and focus. Focus is just what I write for my affirmations. So it's a place for me to jot down all of my goals and positive affirmations for the month ahead. If you really want to make that sort of piece of paper pop, do a little bit of line shading and cross-hatching along the bottom and right-hand side with the month title up top, and that's it. Our goals and focus page is complete. Next up, I want to do a relatively large calendar since September is usually a busy month. So the grid goes across 1.5 pages, and then over on the right-hand side, we've got room for a little illustration as well as some notes and to-do lists. I've got that laid out in pencil, and we're going to take a fine liner, 0.9 millimeter, and I'm just going to pull that pen towards my body. I do this every month. I don't like to fuss around with rulers. It's just so much easier to pull that pen in towards you. It helps you make like a fairly straight line, and you can just go over everything super quickly. I'll write notes and to do in the bottom corner here, and then I'm going to fill in the top of the calendar just nice black, but you could also use a color there if you like. If you like a little color, if you're not afraid of color like me. Just kidding. Actually, if you prefer a very colorful spread, there have been whole years where I challenged myself to be a lot more colorful than what comes to me naturally, and I actually loved it. So definitely check out all my journal spreads from 2020, 2021, even 2022. There was quite a bit of color, and a cover page from September for any of those years is a good cover page for September of this year. I'm also putting a little pot of chrysanthemums here, and I just sketched this wonky flower pot, did a whole bunch of circles above it, and then when I went over the circles with pen with fine liner, I made the edges all ruffly, actually. And so it's just a really quick and simple way to draw a flower like a chrysanthemum or an aster or even a marigold. And then I'm just going to leave the flowers as they are, simple, white, graphic, and I'll frame them with lots of dark stems and leaves. Has a nice graphic look, but it's simple. I'll sketch a kind of long oval beside the flower pot and color it in for the shadow, just scribble it in. We'll use our white gel pen across the top of the calendar. That black should be plenty dry by now. And then I'll take a smaller nib fine liner. For the shading today, I'm mostly using a 0.3 or 0.5 millimeter nib. And I'm just going to do these thin little lines all along the length of that pot. And then I did a little grid on the tablecloth here, so why not color it in like that checkerboard classic pattern? And again, I'm just using line shading to color it in. So I'm not going for like a solid black. I think cross-hatching, line shading, scribble shading, it always looks better and more interesting than just going black. And if all of that is like, what is cross-hatching? Well, I'm doing it right now, but I also have a big new illustration e-course launching this September, in mid-September, and there is going to be 2 weeks of pre-sales leading up to it. So make sure you're subscribed and watching the latest videos, or go follow me over on my Patreon. You can now sign up for free if you don't want to be a paid like bonus content member. You can at least just sign up and make sure that you're there for all of the announcements. Actually, even free members get access to some of the sale prices. So head over to patreon.com/Shayda Campbell and sign up now. I wrote chrysanthemum for joy and happiness, and we have the sweetest and simplest little graphic September calendar. Let's flip over, and the next thing we're going to do is a goals tracker for the first semester, or if you're not in school, for the months of September through December. We'll call it the first semester of my 40s. I just turned 40 on August 9th. I've been talking about it a lot. I've been celebrating. And so I want to do a goals tracker because primarily this September period, September through Christmas, always feels like a very busy but exciting time. It's a time when I'm very into bullet journaling. I want to track my goals, do all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to use the beautiful nasturtium as the flower because nasturtiums are a symbol of victory. That's their meaning, and so it seems like the perfect thing for a goals tracker. I sketched some nasturtiums, like a little pot, tiny flower pot, giant flowers. Then using a brush pen, I'm writing goals here. That's the only part of this whole setup I used a brush pen for, so don't worry if you don't have one. You can always just do a bubble lettering or something like that. I wrote first semester goals there, and then using that same fine liner, I'm going over my entire illustration. The nasturtiums are a lot like the other flowers I've been drawing. You sketch a circle and then just make the perimeter of the circle a little bit lumpier when you go over it with fine liner. I did a simple flower pot with all these lines for shading, and then for the leaves, you can see how I'm filling them in here to darken them. And that just helps differentiate between what is leaf and what is flower. It's a really simple way of shading the entire illustration to make everything kind of sing, and it doesn't look too dark or too light. You've got a nice contrast. We'll move over to the right-hand side. I'm going to create a grid of 6. In my Archer and Olive notebook, all the squares were 11 squares in length, 11 grid squares. And then you can see I've got September through December, and we'll use the 2 corners to put another illustration. If you're over the illustrations, you can skip it. Like I said, doing these simple little doodles is a huge part of my me time, my relaxation time, and they don't have to be perfect. They really don't. In fact, I was struggling a little when I was filming this. I was just feeling very like, when you just erase something like 10 times, you're like, why does it look bad? Stuff looked good yesterday. Why does it look bad today? It was like one of those days. But this is my job, so I couldn't really just throw it aside. And I think that's actually a good thing sometimes, that I can't take a break from it. I just have to push through, and it always ends up being like, you know what? It was fine. It was totally fine. There wasn't anything as bad. Sometimes I think the mistakes, in air quotes, are just in my head a little bit. I think you know what I'm saying, but if you're feeling like the doodles are stressing you out, I urge you to push through. Follow what I'm doing with a lot of this scribble shading and these messy, simple flowers, and try to just take joy in the process. These nasturtiums that I'm sketching on the right-hand side here are so simple. They're really just a doodle. Frankly, the ones on the left are just a doodle. They're just bigger. So no stress, have fun with the doodles. And then let's talk a little about how this first semester goals tracker is going to work. So you can see we've got the months of September through December listed here. And then on the left-hand side, what I want to do is I want to make a list. The list might only have 5 or 6 goals on it. These are big things that I want to work on through this fall. So for one example, I want to knit sweaters for Sully, my son, and his cousin Nils, who's the exact same age. So by Christmas, they both need a winter knitted sweater. So now I take that large goal and I break it down. So in September, I'm going to knit both of the sweater bodies. Then in October, I'm going to knit all 4 sweater arms. In November, we'll do the sweater assembly and knit the yokes, and that gives me December to finish up weaving in the ends, getting everything wrapped for Christmas. If you're not a knitter, you're like, what are you even talking about? But basically what I've done is I've taken a large goal that might seem a little scary, like knitting 2 whole sweaters, and I've broken it down into small steps, and each step goes in a month, so it keeps me accountable and on track. If you're heading into university this semester, I think this tracker is excellent for staying on top of large assignments. Okay, let's move right along and we're going to do a weekly layout together. For this weekly layout, I am doing one of my favorites. It's a highly structured 1-week, 2-page spread that starts with all these rectangles along the bottom. In the Archer and Olive notebook, I make them 7 grid squares across, and they're all 2 grid squares apart. You can make them as tall as you like, and then you've got this upper margin where you can place a little notes and to-do list. I'm, of course, going to do a floral illustration. Write the date in marker. You can use a nice warm gray. I don't know, it's just an idea. It's a thought I had. Warm gray, always nice. Do a little highlight on each box. And you can also use your marker to write notes or to-do lists, and then just use that fine liner to give it a little shadow if you want to be extra. And that was quick, that was simple, but I've done that before and it's pretty self-explanatory. So with the bones of the layout complete, let's do another little floral illustration together. I'm drawing another vase. Like, these vases and flower pots can truly be any shape: a square, a rectangle, a rounded rectangle, a circle, just some sort of pot or vase structure. And then the flowers themselves are so messy. For this one, I'm doing a sunflower, and I've done all these weird oval and circle shapes. Some of them are kind of squared off. I'm doing the messiest petals, and then we'll just give them some stems. We'll draw that very weirdly shaped vase, and we'll put a little water in it, and we'll make all those stems connect, and some of them kind of don't quite connect in the water. That's just one little detail. We'll put some messy leaves, add the line for the table, and finish it up with a shadow. And that is the structure for really all the illustrations we've done today. The final step, of course, is to add some contrast. So find something to scribble in, to shade with some lines. In this case, I did the center of the sunflowers as well as the stems and the leaves. And then I'm going to do some horizontal lines on that table. So you've got a nice contrast. Everything is simple, a little wonky, a little wrong. And we just really have skimped. We've been very stingy with the details. We're keeping it simple. This structured layout has left me with a few spaces, a few sort of margins. So this upper margin, I'm just writing week of September 4th to 10th. And I just write it in all, like, a simple print in pencil, and then I go around with the fine liner and turn the print into like very bad bubble letters. And then over here in the left margin, I have room for a calendar. So I'll put the September calendar, switch to a smaller nib fine liner to do all the numbers, and then I'll just add that little bit of warm gray. The absolute last thing I need to do is write the floral meaning. So sunflowers for loyalty, and I've got a little bit of space over here on the right. Okay, goals tracker done, weekly setup done, but I am not done. I have one more setup to share because September is a special month. Might be my favorite month of the year. Fall, the beginning of fall, the beginning of, Christmas. We're closing in on Christmas, you guys. Okay, so this one is also good for students or anybody who just wants to get on top of things because it's a simple list. It's a list of 15-minute tasks. So it's for when you've got 15 spare minutes, and instead of just staring at your phone, you've got all these tasks that you could do. It's either toxic productivity or it's really great for keeping you off of your phone and getting you to do the things that you might otherwise procrastinate on. For me, it's a good reminder that a lot can be accomplished in just 15 minutes. So if I have a little window of time, I can do any of the things on this list. And I'm going to list things like, doing meal prep for the next day, just sitting down to do a stretch or a bit of yoga, tidying up Sully's playroom, or just practicing my doodles or practicing my sketching, maybe just even organizing and working in my bullet journal, all of that good stuff. So I started up here in the right-hand corner doing another simple bubble font, really messy. And then over on the left, I did another rectangular illustration. This is the hollyhock, and it stands for ambition. The illustration is very similar to when I illustrate gladiolas. I just start with the stem and then draw a whole bunch of circles along that stem. And each flower is one circle, and we've got some little funny buds at the top, and there's also lots of leaves framing the flowers and their long willowy stems as well. And that's really all it is, a simple illustration, a nice big title, and then we've got a whole page here where we can write out a list of these tasks that we might otherwise forget about. Stuff like cleaning out your purse, it's so nice when you have it done, and it only takes 10 minutes. Same with doing yoga. It's like, would I rather do a nice stretch or yoga, or would I just like to stare at my phone? I mean, sometimes I just want to stare at my phone, but the benefit I would get out of doing 15 minutes of stretching is so much greater. So just a good daily reminder, and you only have to pick one of these every other day if you want. I mean, you can use it however you want. I'm not telling you how to use it. I don't know. I'm going to do a little shadow on the lettering, and then like the other illustrations, I want to add some contrast. So I'm coloring in all those leaves with a little bit of line shading, and that's giving my illustration that nice graphic black and white look. And there we go. Our 15-minute task tracker is complete. It's amazing what you can do in 15 minutes. So the September setup, you guys, it's a big one. We did this graphic language of flowers bouquet cover page. Right after that, we've got this goals and affirmations page where we've also written and celebrated all those different flowers and their meanings. So you can pick any flowers, the ones that have meanings that speak to you and your goals. The September calendar with the chrysanthemums for joy and happiness. I just love the language of flowers. It's so mystical, so interesting. We should do more on this theme. Goals tracker for the first semester. Break those goals down into simple parts. We have a nice 2-page structured weekly layout with lots of room for your to-do lists and your notes. And then finally, I finished up with my 15-minute task tracker, just a good reminder for how to spend that time doing things that serve you. Of course, you can grab my cover page that's available to all my patrons over on Patreon. Head over there after the video and sign up to support this channel. It's only $2 a month to be a patron, or $22 for the whole year. Thanks for watching today, friends. I will see you soon with a new tutorial.